Ms. Ramuno, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Phipps, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Phipps, would you please state your full name for the record?
Malcolm Pittman Phipps.
Right. And Mr. Phipps, how are you employed?
I'm a salesman.
And where do you work?
Right now I work in St. Louis, Missouri.
And what company do you work for?
Well, I work actually for two companies. I work for a company called Venco Partners, and I work for a company called Buckingham Exteriors. I become freelance project manager.
Okay. And what type of sales are you involved in?
Right now I do storm restoration. I work with commercial buildings that have been damaged by hail and other storms.
Right. Now, Mr. Phipps, at some point in time, you lived in the state of Arizona. Is that correct?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Right. Is that in the year 2009 to 2010?
I did. I moved here 1st of December 2009.
All right. Now, prior to moving here in around the 1st of December 2009, what state did you live in?
I was in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida.
And had you been in the state of Florida for some time?
For about 10 years.
All right. Now, Mr. Phipps, while you were in the state of Florida, you had some troubles with the law. Is that correct? Right. In fact, on one date in the year 2000, you engaged in some criminal activity that resulted in some felony convictions. Is that correct? All right. And are those your only felony convictions? Those dating in those back from the date of July 24th of the year 2000?
Yes.
Okay. And to be
Well, I had some felony convictions when I was much younger, but since then, those are my only felony.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you spent your time in Florida, and then you came here to the state of Arizona, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Now, when you came here to the state of Arizona, was there a particular reason why you came here?
Yes, my son lived here in Phoenix, and he worked for a company called PMI in Scottsdale, and I went to work for that company. That's the reason I came here.
And what does PMI stand for?
Professional Marketing International, and it also was a sales organization.
Okay. What type of sales did you do for that organization?
That was all telephone work, and what they sold was coaching packages for people that were starting new businesses, and we helped them start the business.
Now, when you moved here around the 1st of December 2009, were you looking for a place to live?
I was.
Right. And what did you do to look for a place to live?
Well, I went on Craigslist, and I was actually trying to find something fairly close to where I worked until I could get an apartment of my own. So I was really looking for a roommate situation.
All right. And at some point, did you come across an ad for a room in a trailer located in the city of Tempe?
I did.
Okay. And at some point, did you come to meet a woman by the name of Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes, I did.
Right. And do you see her in the courtroom here today?
Do I see Elizabeth Johnson? I don't know if I see her or not, that I would recognize her.
Okay. Has it been some time since you've seen her?
Just it's been since, 2009.
Okay. All right. Well, did you go to the trailer that was posted on Craigslist?
I did.
Okay. And at that time, did you meet a woman that represented herself to be Elizabeth
Yes.
Johnson? When you met her, do you recall around what date it was?
It was, I want to say around the 10th of December.
Okay. And on the 10th of December, what did you do?
Well, and again, this has been a while back. I went over and met her and saw the room in the trailer, and we agreed that I would move in, and I paid her a deposit and some rent money for December. And it was a couple days after that I actually moved in.
Okay. And do you recall what the rent was? How much?
I want to say it was $400 for the month and then a deposit also.
Right. So when you first moved in, did you pay her a deposit and the rent, which would be about $800?
I did.
Okay. And you stated that you moved in a couple days later.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, when you went to look at the home, was she the only one that was present?
She was.
And was that home located on Priest Drive?
Yes.
All right. What room in the house did she show you?
Well, there were only 2 bedrooms, and the room had been a child's room.
Okay. How do you know it was a child's room?
Well, she told me that.
Okay.
And she was in the process of moving things out of it. And there were kids, there were baby things around the room. I think the crib had already been moved out, but there was a dresser and just little mobiles and just, little toys and things like that around the room.
All right. And did she indicate to you at that time where the baby was or where the baby was going?
She did. She told me that the baby had been put up for adoption. I don't believe she told me she was married, but she was separated from the father, and that they had put the baby up for adoption, and that's the story that she told me at that time.
Now, by the time you moved in, which was, you say was a day or two later, when you went back to see that room, were all the baby items gone, or were there still
There
some
were a few
in it?
things there. I moved some things myself out into a little storage shed that was there on the property.
So there was a storage shed right on the property, and you moved it back there.
Yes.
Now, once you moved into the house, well, did you ever see her child?
The day that I was supposed to move in, and I want to say it was around 5 in the afternoon that I was supposed to be there, she actually called me and asked me to come a little later because the people that had adopted her baby were there at the house with the baby, and she wanted me to wait till they left. And so when I got there, they were actually standing out front. A couple, I think she had the baby. I drove by. I didn't pull up because I was trying to give her a little space to finish her business, and I actually just pulled down to the end of the street and waited for a few minutes while they finished up. The couple got in the car with the baby and drove off. And then that's the only time I saw a baby around the trailer.
Okay. And when you moved in that day, did she come into the house with you? And okay.
Hold on for 1 second. Typical conversation, you say uh-huh or mm-hmm. Here you need to say affirmatively yes or no so the court reporter can take it down. Go ahead, Ms. Romano.
Thank you, Your Honor. You stated that she did come into the house with you that day.
Yes, she did.
After that day, about how many times did you actually come into contact with Ms. Johnson?
Well, let me think. Not many. Maybe a half a dozen times that I saw her when I would come. I worked fairly late, and I would come in, and either she wasn't there at all, or the few times that she was there, it was again just kind of in crossing. And I usually didn't stay out and socialize with her. I'd go back to my room and stay to
Now,
myself.
when you did have contact with her, did you speak with her?
Sometimes.
Did you observe what she was doing?
Sometimes, it was kind of obvious. She was on her computer a lot. I noticed that. She was selling things, and I kind of noticed that she had things up for sale. We kind of talked about that, and she was just kind of downsizing from her relationship, is the way she put it.
Did she sell her dogs?
I never saw the dog. She told me that she'd had 2 dogs that had been sold.
And you noticed that she was selling other items as well?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Now, during that time when you did have conversations with her, did she ever indicate to you what her plans for the child were?
No.
Okay, you stated that she told you she had given up the baby for adoption?
That the baby had been given up for adoption.
Was there a time where you had a conversation with her about the adoption in relation to the father of the child?
There was, and I've thought about that, whether it was before she left or whether it was in a conversation that we had on the phone after she was gone. That she told me at some point that she did not want the baby to go back to the father. She never really went into detail about it. She just said, "I'm not going to let the father have the baby."
Okay. In fact, do you recall telling us earlier that she said she was going to make sure that the father never saw the baby again?
She was pretty adamant about it. That's correct.
Now, you indicated that there was a point in time in which you did talk to her when she had left the state.
Yes.
Now, I just want to be clear. Did she tell you before she left Arizona that she was in fact leaving, or did you find out?
No, she did not.
Do you recall the last time that you actually saw her in the state of Arizona?
I don't recall the exact date. I noticed 2 things. One, I hadn't seen her for a few days, and her answering machine had been left turned on, and I started hearing messages from people that were looking for her. And I eventually went and turned the machine down because I was kind of tired of listening to it.
Do you recall speaking to the police back in the year 2009 and 2010?
To the police?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
In fact, you spoke to them on several occasions.
Yes.
Now, do you recall telling them back at that time that it was about the 15th or 16th of December that you last saw her?
And that seems about right, yes.
And that would be about a week or so after you moved
Week
in.
to 10 days after I moved in.
Now, you mentioned that you started to hear voicemail messages looking for her. Did you have any way of contacting her at that time?
I had her phone number, from when I originally had contacted her. And I can't honestly remember if it was after the police came the first time that I tried to call her. It seems like I tried to call her before that just to find out what was going on. I remember, I want to say it was her sister, but it was a female that was calling very, urgent, trying to get a hold of her, leaving messages. And I think it was her grandfather that was trying to call and had left messages for her. And so I tried to call to find out what was going on.
And did you get in contact with her?
She eventually called me or texted me on another number. She had another phone, and she basically told me that she was gone for a while, everything was fine, there were no problems, she'd be back in a little while, she just needed to get away, just kind of put me off, like, don't worry about it, everything's okay.
All right, now, and it's okay if you don't remember, but do you remember around what time that was that you spoke to her? Before the police came, after the police came?
I honestly do not. I mean, I remember speaking to her after the police came. I know I contacted her then, or we were in contact. But she didn't contact me but a couple of times. And then she didn't respond to my email or my texts or my calls.
Now, did there come a point in time when a man by the name of Logan McQueary came to the house?
Yes,
And did you know who he was?
I did. He identified himself to me. And, of course, she had told me about her boyfriend.
All right. And do you recall around what time he came to see you at the house?
I don't know the exact date. I want to say it was before Christmas, but I could be wrong. But it was right in that same time frame.
To the best of your recollection today, it was around Christmas time?
Yes.
Probably before?
Yes.
All right. And when he came to the home, tell us about your interaction with him.
He wanted to come in, and I didn't let him come in. I was a little uncomfortable with that. He stood on the porch, and he was very cordial. Asked me if I knew anything about Elizabeth, or where she was, anything about the baby, those kinds of questions. And I really didn't, have much to tell him. I believe at that time I'd been in contact with the police, because I believe I told him the police had been in the trailer and had been around.
Now, when you say that you felt uncomfortable letting him in the home, is there any particular reason why?
Well, because it wasn't, I rented a room from Elizabeth, and again, I didn't know the whole story at that time. And I just felt like it was not my place to let him come in and look through her things.
All right. Now, when you did have interaction with him there that day, you indicated that he was cordial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did he harass you in any way?
No.
Did he threaten you in any
No.
way? It was just a regular conversation, kind of asking you questions,
Yes.
you giving him information.
Yes.
Now, at some point, the police did come to the house looking for the baby. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And in fact, did the Tempe Police Department come to that house 2 times on one day?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And the first time an officer came and kind of just looked around, asked you some questions.
Yes.
And
Hold on for 1 second. We're having a conversation where you're both talking at once, and that's going to be hard for the court reporter to pick up. So make sure she's completely finished her question before you answer, and she'll make sure you finished your answer before she starts her question. So go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe my question was the first time a single officer had come to the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he basically just looked around and asked you some questions.
Yes.
Then later in the day, did 2 detectives come and do a more thorough search of the house?
That's correct.
And you allowed both of those sets of officers into the house to do what they needed to do. Is that a fair statement?
I did. They also went out to the shed and looked around.
Now, you indicated that at various points, you indicated that you did have contact with Elizabeth via text message before the police came and after the police came.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
That is my memory.
Okay, and or telephone contact?
Yes.
Did you tell her that Logan had been to the house?
I believe I did. I believe I told her about the police, and I believe I told her about Logan.
Now, did you continue living in that home for much longer after this incident came to your... Okay. About how much longer did you live in that home?
I moved out, I want to say it was about 2 or 3 days after Christmas.
Okay, and why was that?
Well, when they started talking about bringing cadaver sniffing dogs around, I figured it was time for me to move on. So I was just uncomfortable in the whole situation. I felt kind of trapped there. I didn't know what was going on with her, with Logan, and really just did not want to be there.
Okay, and you moved just to another location in the Phoenix area, correct?
Over in Scottsdale, yes.
In fact, you gave the police officers your forwarding contact information, correct?
Yes, I did.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Victor or Ms. Clark? You may.
Judge, we have no questions for this witness.
Okay, thank you. Does the jury have any questions for Mr. Phipps before we let him go? Going once, going twice. May this witness be excused. Ms. Romano?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Mr. Victor?
Yes, Judge.
You may step down. Thank you. Ms. Romano, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Elfadli, would you please state your full name?
Amir Elfadli.
And, sir, were you previously employed as the assistant manager at the 99-cent only store in Tempe, Arizona?
Yes.
And is that located on 790 East Southern?
Said yes.
Yes.
One of the things that you have to try and do, make sure you don't answer or You got to say yes or no. Make sure you speak so the court reporter can take down what you're saying, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Elfadli, could you briefly tell us what your job duties were as an assistant manager?
Assistant manager is, I used to work, helping customers, directing employees, for like merchandising, helping the cashiers, doing the schedule sometimes, because usually the store manager does the schedule, but sometimes we do schedules too.
Okay. Now I'm going to draw your attention to the date of December 9th, 2009. Were you working in the capacity as an assistant manager at that time?
Yes.
All right. And was there an incident in your store?
Yes.
All right. And was that incident involving one of your employees by the name of Logan McQueary and his girlfriend at the time?
Yes.
All right. Now, what was Mr. McQuarrie's position at the 99-cent only store?
He was a merchandiser. He used to stock merchandise in the store.
And do you recall what his typical hours were, or what the typical hours of a merchandiser would be?
I think afternoons.
And at this time of the year, it was gearing up for the Christmas season, so would you say that it was a busy time of year for the store?
Yes.
All right. Now, was Mr. McQueary a reliable employee?
Yes.
All right. And how well did you know him?
I don't recall the exact period of time. I don't know, over a month, couple months, I'm not sure.
That's about how long you remember having contact with him as an employee?
Is that yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Now, on the date of December 9th, 2009, you indicated already that there was an incident at the store. Can you tell us what your involvement in that incident was?
What I recall is I remember Mr. Logan was locked in the office, and his girlfriend was upset at that time. I don't recall the details. So.
All right. Now, when you state that she was upset, what made you believe she was upset?
I think I hear her yelling, but the exact location where she was yelling, I don't recall that.
Now, at some point, you indicated that Logan McQueary was in the office of the store. Where is that located in that store? Where would the office be in relation to the front door?
In the back of the store.
Okay, and is that an employee-only area?
It's a management office and the lounge room for the employees on the other side.
Okay, and is that an area where only employees are allowed to enter?
Yes.
All right, and it sounds like your attention was drawn to the back of the store at some time. Did you go to the back of the store?
To that area?
Yes.
I think so.
And at some point, did the police arrive at the store and take statements about what had occurred there that day?
I remember the police came in, but I don't recall the interview and getting the statements.
Okay, but you do recall that the police came to your location that day?
Yes.
Right. Were you able to You said that Logan's girlfriend was yelling. Do you recall what she was yelling about or what she was saying?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
No questions, Judge.
All right. Do we have any questions for Mr. Elfadli before we let him step down from the jury? Doesn't look like it. May this witness be excused?
Yes, please, Your
Mr. Victor?
Yes, Judge.
You may step down. Thank you.
Groulx.
Ms. Ramuno, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Greer, would you please state your full name?
Cynthia Groulx.
And I believe you just spelled it for the court reporter. It's spelled a little bit differently than how it's pronounced. What is your current occupation?
Right now I'm in retail.
Okay. And previously, did you work at a store called the 99-cent only store?
Yes, I did.
And did you work at a location located in Tempe, Arizona?
Yes.
Specifically located at 790 East Southern?
Yes.
Were you working there during the month of December 2009?
Yes, I was.
And specifically, do you remember working the date of December 9th, 2009?
Yes.
Now, on that day at that store, what was your position?
I was head cashier.
Okay, and what does head cashier do? What are your job responsibilities?
Pretty much what I do is I took care of the front end of the store, the registers, counting the cashiers in and out, helping the manager on duty, whatnot.
And what about answering the phones? Is that part of your job duty or something that just kind of gets included in sometimes?
It is part of the job duty because the phones were located in the front of the store.
Okay. Now, during that time, did you know another employee by the name of Logan McQueary?
Yes, I did.
All right. And what was his position in the store?
He was a stalker.
And how well did you know him?
I just knew him through work, pretty much, just seeing him at work.
Okay. Would you ever converse with him at work?
A little bit here and there.
Okay. Did he ever talk to you about his home life?
Not so much, no.
Okay. Did you know anything about his outside life?
Not really.
Okay. Did you know that he had a son?
Yeah.
Would he talk to you about that?
Yeah, he had mentioned it a couple times.
All right. And what about his girlfriend? Did he ever talk to you about his girlfriend?
No.
Now, on the date of December 9th, 2009, was Logan McQueary also working that day?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Was there anything unusual about him that day?
He did seem a little, not necessarily upset, but a little bit off. He was a lot more focused on his job duties, not as talkative.
All right. And because of that, what did you do?
I went over and I talked to him.
Did you talk to anyone else that day?
Yeah, I usually talk to all the employees.
Okay. All right. Did you know if there was anything going on with him that day?
Not that I knew of until later on that night.
Okay. All right. Now, at some point during that day, did you receive or answer the phone and his girlfriend was calling him?
Yes.
All right. Do you recall what your shift was that day?
My shift was 3 or 4 to close, which was 10 p.m.
All right. Would that be like the afternoon shift there?
Yeah, it was the afternoon shift.
Okay, so you started at about 3 p.m. that day until about 10 o'clock.
Yes.
All right. And do you recall about how many times you answered the phone?
I would say 3 to 4.
Okay, and was that specifically when his girlfriend was calling?
Yes.
All right. And did she ask to speak to him?
Yes, she did. She called. I answered the phone as normal, and she asked to speak to Logan. I called him over the intercom to the front where the phones were.
Okay. Did he ever come up and answer the phone?
Yes, he did.
Okay. About how many times?
I would say like 2 to 3 times.
Okay. Were there ever times where he wasn't able to answer the call?
After he had talked to her, I believe he had kind of, she called again, tell her I'm busy, whatnot. And so I told her if she would like to leave a message, I would have him call her on his break because he was busy working.
Okay. And at some point, did the phone calls end?
Yes, they did.
All right. And did she come up to the store eventually?
Eventually, yes.
Okay. Where were you in the store when she came to the store?
I was in the middle aisle where you can see the front door with Logan.
Okay. And you were actually with Logan at that time?
Yes, I was.
All right. And when you were with him, please tell us, the events that occurred once Elizabeth came into the store?
Me and him were in the aisle. I believe he noticed her first because I was talking to him, and he took off the other way towards the break room, and she came in through the front door and went the opposite way of the aisle, and I followed towards the break room.
Okay, now had you ever seen her before that day?
I had not known.
How did you know it was her?
He was telling me about her that day. He just mentioned that he,
Objection, hearsay.
Oh, we were about to potentially have hearsay. You can't talk about what he might have said to you usually, so that's why there was an objection. So we'll ask another question.
Okay.
Did something in your conversation alert you to the fact that was her?
Yes, as we were talking, he stated there.
Don't tell us what he said.
Oh.
Okay.
She came in the door and.
And you were made aware that that was her? At that
Yes,
point?
I was.
Okay. Now, you stated that he went towards the back of the store to the back room, I believe you said?
Yes.
Right. She went around another way?
Mm-hmm.
And then you...
Yes.
Okay. And then you followed Mr. McQueary into the back?
Yes.
Okay. And after you followed him into the back, what happened then?
She continued to follow the opposite way to where she was behind me in a hallway. He then proceeded to our break room where I locked the door, and he stayed in there while I went to the front of the store to get my keys to allow him to enter into the office.
Okay. And what made you react in that manner?
Just his reaction. That whole day, he had mentioned, that he didn't want to
Objection,
contact.
hearsay.
Oh, sorry.
Your Honor, it's not up for the truth of the matter, sir, just as to why she took the steps she took.
I think that's correct. That wasn't going to be a hearsay statement. Go ahead and ask the question again.
What made you react in the way that you did, walking to the back and getting the keys? You can say
Sorry.
it, Judge.
Okay.
If it explains why you did it.
Don't worry if it's just rules that sometimes won't let me allow you to say it. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Just answer the question as best you can. If there's an issue, I'll let you know. Otherwise, go ahead and answer the question.
Okay. Sorry, I'm really nervous. Sorry.
Why don't you go ahead and ask the question again?
Okay. What made you react the way you did by going and getting the keys and following him to the back room?
More or less his reaction of going into the break room.
Okay. And when you got the keys, well, it sounds like you followed him to the back and then you had to go back up to the front to get the keys.
Yes.
When you came back, where was his girlfriend?
She was in the hallway by a door, like in the middle of the doorway.
Okay. And does this hallway lead to where the break room is?
Yes, it was a long hallway, and the break room was right next to the office.
All right. And is this clearly marked as an employees-only area?
Yes, it was.
All right. Now, did you say anything to her about going back into that area?
I did. I asked her if she could please stay behind the door because it was for employees only.
Okay. And what was she doing during this time?
She was standing there. She was just, Logan, I need to talk to you, Logan, just pretty much stating his name a lot.
Okay. And what kind of tone was she using? Was she speaking very loudly?
It was a loud voice, yeah.
Okay. Was she indicating what she had to talk to him about?
She just kept mentioning, Logan, I need to speak to you. It's important. It's important. It's about your son.
All right. And was he remaining in the break room at that time?
Yes, until I allowed him into the office.
Okay. So at some point, you let him out of the break room and he went into the office. Is that right across the hall?
It's literally like a step over.
Is it across the hall or next door?
Here, a doorway here, right
Okay.
over.
All right. So are they right next to each
Yes.
other? Okay. And when he went to go into the office, what happened then?
She proceeded to try to enter into the office as well.
Okay. And when she tried to enter into the office, what happened?
I just quickly closed the door.
All right. Was she trying to get into the door?
She was knocking on the door, yelling for his name.
Okay. And who was in that office when you went in?
Nobody. It was just myself and Logan.
Okay. And did you lock the door?
Yes.
All right. Now, once you locked the door, what happened?
We called for the manager on duty to come into the office.
Okay. And what was that manager's name?
Adrian Matus.
Okay. And what happened when you called Adrian?
He came. There were cameras inside the office to the hallway, so I can see when he was coming to the door. As he approached the door, I stood by the door and unlocked it so that he can come in. As he came in, the girl tried to push her way through as well.
Okay, so you called Adrian to come back, and as he was trying to go into the office, the girlfriend was trying to push her way in as well?
Yes.
And what happened then?
We pretty much just shut the door on her.
Okay. And was she saying anything at that point?
I don't remember. I just remember her yelling for his name, just Logan, Logan.
Okay. All right. Now, did you remain in the office with the three of them at that point?
Not very long. I stayed in there for a minute, and then I was called up to the front by another cashier.
Okay. And when you left, what happened?
When I left, I went and handled my cashiers, whatnot, and then we called the police.
And were you there when the police arrived?
Yes, I was.
And did you talk to the police about what you observed?
Yes, I did.
Other than the things you told us about what she was saying, did you hear her talking to the police at all?
No, I did not.
Did you hear Logan talking to the police?
I did not.
Did Logan ask you to do anything?
He did mention, can you ask him where is my son?
And did you do that?
Yeah, I asked one of the police officers, like, he's really worried about his son. Like, I don't know where he is or anything, but he keeps asking where's his son.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
No questions, Judge.
Thank you. Before we let Ms. Groulx go, do we have any questions from the jury? Doesn't look like it. You may step down. Thank you. Watch your step going down. And the state may call its next witness. Ramona, you may proceed.
Thank you. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Bill Jones,
And who are you employed by?
for the City of Tempe Police Department,
And what is your position there?
currently assigned to the Criminal Investigation Bureau.
And I'm going to draw your attention back to December of 2009. Did you work for the Tempe Police Department at that time as well?
Yes, I did.
And what was your position then?
At that point in time, I was a patrol officer.
Now, so I'm going to draw your your attention specifically to the date of December 9th, 2009. Were you working that day?
Yes, I was.
And were you working the afternoon shift?
Yes, I was.
Were you dispatched to the location of 790 East Southern in Tempe?
Yes, I was.
What was the nature of that call?
It was a call of it was a female disturbing inside the store.
And when you went to that, did you immediately go to that location upon receiving call out?
Yes, I did.
And was that around 1842 hours?
Yes.
And is that 6:42 p.m.?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Now, when you arrived at that store, did you arrive alone or were there other officers there?
There were other officers there.
Okay, what officers were there if you recall?
May I refer my report, just get
Sure.
their names
If
correct?
that will refresh your memory, please let us know when your memories refresh.
Okay.
Okay, which officers were there?
Officer Payne and Officer Travis Smith.
And when you arrived at the location, what did you observe immediately?
Officer Smith was speaking to a female.
And did you get any information, was this the female that was in question?
Yes.
Okay, did you learn that through your investigation that day?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you said that Officer Smith was speaking to her. Did you at some point speak to her as well?
Yes, briefly.
Okay, did you ask her what was going on essentially?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what did she state?
She stated, I believe she was there to look for her son, Gabriel.
Okay, did she state that her ex-boyfriend Logan McQueary had the child and she wanted the child back?
Yes.
All right. Now, once she gave you that information, did Officer Smith continue speaking with her?
I believe he did, yes.
All right. And did you take action then by speaking with Logan McQueary?
Yes, I did.
All right. And where was he located, if you recall?
I believe he was in the back store employee room.
And when you spoke with him there, did you, without telling us what he said, did you obtain information from him about what had occurred that day?
Yes, I did.
And when you got that information, what did you do next?
Went back to where Officer Smith was interviewing the female.
Okay, could you just speak up just a little bit?
Yes, I went back to where Officer Smith was.
Okay. And was he still speaking with Miss Johnson at that time?
Yes, he was.
Now, during that time, did Miss Johnson indicate that there was a previous incident to her being there where Logan had taken the child?
Yes, she did.
Okay, and did she indicate that an officer by the name of Officer Williams had been involved in that incident?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Did you do any verification as to whether or not there was a call out to which Officer Williams responded?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and was there one?
Yes, there was a call the previous day.
Okay, and would that have been December 8th, 2009?
Yes.
Now, during this time, was Miss Johnson telling you about the events of the day and the previous day?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And at some point, did you confront her about her statements?
Yes, I did.
And why did you do that?
Because they were inconsistent with what the premise history showed for her address.
However, did she maintain that Logan McQueary had taken the child and she did not know the whereabouts of the child?
Yes, she did.
Okay, and did this cause further investigation into the location of the whereabouts of Gabriel Johnson?
Yes, it did.
Specifically, what did you do to try to find the whereabouts of Gabriel Johnson that day?
Myself and Officer Payne obtained consent to search her vehicle and her residence.
Okay, and once you obtained the consent to search, just for explanation for the jury, basically you asked her, is it okay if we look in your car and at your house?
Yes, that's correct.
And she said it was okay?
Yes.
Alright. Once you obtained that consent, did you in fact look in her car?
Yes, we did.
And was the child there?
No.
Did you look in her home?
Yes,
And is that the home located on Priest Drive?
that's correct.
Right, and was the baby found there?
No.
Did you conduct any further follow-up investigation?
I contacted her, it was her brother, via telephone.
All right, and was there any information leading to where Gabriel Johnson was from what he told you?
No, it was not.
After you went to her car, went out to her home, and contacted her brother, did you advise other investigators of the information you had collected?
I advised the supervisor on the scene.
Okay, and was that Sergeant Kepler?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And once you advised him of the information you obtained, did you have any further involvement that day?
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
No questions, Judge, thank you.
All right, before we let Detective Jones step down, does the jury have any questions for him? Doesn't look like it. May this witness be excused, Ms. Romano?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Victor?
Yes, Judge.
You may step down, thank you. Romano, you may proceed when you're ready.
Would you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
Phil Amezquit, Amezquit.
And who are you employed by?
City of Tempe.
And what is your current position there?
I'm a police officer. Patrol.
All right. And what shift do you typically work?
Evenings.
Evening shift. Now I'm going to draw your attention back to the date of, well, how long have you been employed by Tempe Police Department?
Over 15 years.
And has your position always been patrol officer during that time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What other positions have you held in the department?
I was a detective for the department for about 4.5 years, and I was a member of the department's action team, which is a community-based team.
Okay. And what does the action team do?
We identify problems within the city and basically attack that problem until the problem goes away.
All right. I'm going to draw your attention to December of 2009. What was your position at that time?
I was a patrol officer.
And do you recall what shift you were working during that time frame as well?
It was evenings. I'm not exactly sure of the hours.
Okay. Specifically, I'm going to draw your attention to the date of December 9th, 2009. Do you recall working that specific day?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were working that specific day, did you receive a dispatch to the 99-cent only store?
I did.
Okay. And is that located at 790 East Southern?
It is.
Right. What was the nature of that dispatch?
Subject disturbing.
When you heard that call out, was that around 1841 hours?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is that 6:41 p.m.?
It is.
All right. What did you do when you heard that call out?
I responded to assist other officers,
Okay, and what other officers did you assist?
Officer Jones and Officer Smith.
When you went to that location, tell us what happened.
I met up with Officer Jones, who was interviewing a female subject.
Okay, and did she later come to be identified as Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And what happened then?
I learned that there was a disturbance in the back office area of the business. So I responded to that location to interview Logan McQueary.
And when you went to that back office area, where was Mr. McQueary?
Inside the main office area of the business.
And while in the main office area, did you speak with him?
I did.
And did you obtain information from him about what had occurred that day?
I did.
Once you obtained that information from him, what did you do then?
I again spoke to I spoke to the manager on duty as well.
Okay, is that a person by the name of Amir Elfadli?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And after you spoke with Mr. Elfadli, what did you do?
I returned to Officer Jones and Officer Smith to speak with them.
And were they still speaking with Miss Johnson at that time?
They were.
Now, while they were speaking with her, did you become involved in the conversation as well?
I actually learned that she was from, I don't know if it was Officer Jones or Officer Smith, that she was now reporting that her child was missing.
Okay, did you hear her say those things herself?
After I later spoke with her, yes.
Okay. So originally you learned from Officer Jones and Smith, and then you spoke with her at some point?
I did.
Okay. And she indicated to you that her son was missing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did she state that Mr. McQueary had taken the child?
She did.
And was she steadfast in that he had taken the child and she did not know where the child was?
She was steadfast in the fact that she did not know where her child was.
Now, when she gave you that information, did you go to speak to Mr. McQueary again?
I did. I interviewed him.
All right, because obviously she's saying Mr. McQueary has the child,
Of
correct?
course.
And you need to follow up on that.
Of course.
All right, so did you speak with him in detail about the events that had occurred over the day or two previous?
I'm sorry.
Did you speak with him about the day or two previous?
I did.
Okay. And after you obtained that information from him, did you obtain additional information?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And was that regarding his family?
It was.
Specifically, what did you ask him to give you?
Phone numbers, addresses, anything I could find out about his family members to see if we could locate the child.
Okay. And was that your purpose in getting that information from him?
To
see
get
if they had the child?
Correct.
Okay. And is that based on what Miss Johnson was alleging?
Yes, it was.
Do you recall approximately how many family members' information you received that day?
I do not. I know it was at least the father and the grandmother.
Okay. And did you do any specific follow-up with those individuals, or did you relay the information to somebody else?
I relayed him to my supervisor at the time, who was at that point spearheading the investigation.
Okay. And was that Sergeant Kepler?
It was.
Now, are you aware of whether or not that follow-up was conducted?
Yes, it was completed, yes.
It was completed. And after a search of Logan McQueary's family members, was the child found?
No, the child wasn't located.
Did you also conduct record checks on Elizabeth Johnson's family members?
I did.
Did you receive contact information for a Tammy Smith and a Ray Baker?
I did.
Okay, and did you attempt to follow up on that information?
I did.
All right. When you attempted to contact Tammy Smith, were you able to make contact with anyone?
No, I was not.
Okay, and did that number come back to a company named Charlene Waters Colonics?
I believe so. I'd have to refer to my report, but
Okay.
if something similar to that, yes.
If referring to your report would refresh your memory, please do so and let us know when your memory is refreshed.
Okay. It was Charlene's Water Colonics, correct.
All right. And when you attempted to call Ray Baker, who was Ray Baker identified as? Do you recall?
I do not. It was an unknown female who answered the phone, and they were less than helpful with police.
Okay. Did they hang up on you?
They did eventually.
Now, at some point, where was this follow-up conducted from? Were you remaining at the scene following up on it?
We remained at the scene. First, when Miss Johnson was originally interviewed, it was like in a hallway area on the west side of the store. We eventually moved the investigation to like a back storeroom, where we ended up continuing our investigation, speaking with her there.
Okay. And at some point, did Miss Johnson leave the scene?
When we were done with our investigation there at the scene.
Okay. She returned to her residence?
She did.
And later during that did the investigation continue, however, even though she went home?
The investigation still is going to continue. We called out our Criminal Investigations Bureau, who sent a couple of detectives out to continue the investigation.
Okay. Was one of those Detective Aguilera?
Aguilera? Yes.
Yes. Okay. And at some point, did you learn that Detective Aguilera had located the whereabouts of the child?
I was informed, yes.
Okay. And was the child located with Logan McQueary or any of his family members?
No.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
No questions, Judge, thank you.
Does the jury have any questions for Officer Amezquit before we let him go? Going once, going twice. May this witness be excused, Ms. Ramuno?
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Victor?
Yes, sir.
You may step down. Thank you.
Thank you.